Joining me now for more on what we should expect is Mo Islam. He's the CEO of Arkaea Media Group. Mo, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashley. It's great to be here, and I wish I was on the trading floor with you to do this.
Well, we're so happy to have you virtually. And before we dive into the news, can you tell us more about what Arkaea does?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've actually said it well, but Arkaea Media we're a B2B news media and intelligence firm that focuses on reporting the news, conducting high signal events, and producing high quality research for critical technologies that are linked to national security. So what that means for us is today we have three brands: Payload, that covers the space industry; Tectonic, that covers defense tech; and a brand that we're relaunching soon called Ignition, that originally focused on nuclear energy, but will focus on what we call kind of new energy in the next few months. And I think it might be helpful kind of just to contextualize, the reason why we're doing this and we're focusing on this is that, the United States is going through a significant change that's both cultural and technological. For the first time in decades, we're rebuilding the industrial and innovation base of the country, from space and defense to energy and advanced manufacturing. These are sectors that used to live deep inside government or large prime contractors. And now you have startups, venture firms, and institutional capital driving that next wave. And we exist to cover that transformation with depth and credibility, and also lean into the cultural element, which is that the next generation of these companies and these technologies are being built by founders and businesses that, for the most part, are only 10 or so years old. Right? Anduril is 8 years old. SpaceX is the oldest, and it's 23 years old. So this signals that there's a much younger cohort of engineers and founders, and they need news in a different way.
All right, and can you set the scene for us? What is next week's summit going to include?
Yeah, so next week in Los Angeles, we are gathering the most important executives and capital allocators within the space industry. And they're gathering to discuss the opportunities and challenges of what's to come from a commercial and defense and national security perspective, right? So this year we expect to have something in the order of 8 to 10 trillion of capital represented amongst the investors in attendance. We've been hosting this in LA, which is effectively the global headquarters of aerospace and defense. And most of the most important companies have a presence or headquarters in LA. We started the event 3 years ago. And when I think about where the industry was then and where we are today, I mean, huge change in interest in institutional capital.
All right, and what cool and interesting things are happening in the space industry right now?
Yeah, I would say, if you're thinking about, historically it was launch, right? If you asked most investors what they were interested in, it was launch. We saw billions of dollars of capital go into launch even outside of SpaceX over the last 5 to 7 years. We're now starting to see who those winners are. There's two that are publicly traded. And I think looking ahead, it's companies that are taking advantage of this new architecture of heavy launch vehicles. You're seeing larger and larger rockets being built. We're soon going to have the ability to put up exponentially more cargo in space at an even lower price point. And that's going to usher in this whole new paradigm shift in engineering. Telecommunications infrastructure is changing, direct-to-cell capabilities, ubiquitous internet connectivity anywhere on Earth. And then most importantly, companies that are aligning themselves with the Department of War to build sort of war-fighting capabilities in space. And even space stations, right? The next domain of warfare is going to be space. There's a ton of government dollars going into it, and investors are interested in that.
All right, and we're seeing a new wave of institutional attention in space. If you could further elaborate, what is driving that shift?
Yeah, I think it's fairly simple. I think the business models and cost structures of space companies have become more reasonable. NASA and the government went from being a builder, which was what they were historically, to a customer. And like I mentioned before, space is the next domain for warfare. So there's global there's global institutional interest in building both deterrence and, in some cases, offensive capabilities in space. China is catching up incredibly quickly to our space capabilities, and it's very likely that they're going to land on the moon by the end of this decade. And it's my belief that as they get close, we're going to finally see kind of Apollo level of political coordination that we saw in the 60s when the United States was trying to prevent the Soviets from landing on the moon first. And all of that is reflected in public markets today, with the number of space companies going public and also the institutional dollars that are allocating to the sector.
All right, thank you, Mo Islam, CEO of Arkaea Media Group.
Thank you.